All right, we are here for ICAD number 11. I can't even believe it. Going strong through this. I'm loving these little mini pieces. My ICADs are 3 by 5 inches. They are just a really simple, thin index card that I picked up from Amazon, and I have covered them all in Liquitex gesso. For ICAD 11, I am stamping one of my favorite Viva Las Vegas stamps. It is a tree with leaves blowing, or depending on how you look at it, it's a flock of birds flying out of the branches, and the leaves on the tree could be made from birds. So it's really cool. I'm stamping it in archival ink. This is a DIY distress ink pad, which just means it's a blank ink pad that I have filled with black soot distress ink. I'm sorry, not distress ink, black soot archival ink. And because my card has texture on it from where I brushed the gesso, then some of the pieces are missing inside the stamp. And that has nothing to do with the stamp. Viva Las Vegas Stamps uses a really high quality pink rubber, but it just can't get down into the grooves that came from my gesso. So first I tried to fill it in with distress, or God, I keep saying distress. It's not distress ink, I swear. It's archival black soot ink. First I tried to fill in some of the missing pieces in the stamp with the archival ink, but the ink is drying so quickly that it's kind of just, it's like drying in the brush before I even get the brush from the ink to the paper. So instead I got out my Carbon Black Fluid Acrylic by Golden, and I'm using that to go over the pieces of the stamp that were missing. So I'm filling in any of the holes, things like that. And I purposely stamped my tree up above where like the horizon line would be, the edge of the card, because I want to put it kind of up on a hill a little bit. I already have this idea. I for the first time, like really, since starting these ICADs, I already had an idea like what I wanted to do. And the reason I'm doing this ICAD is because I have this little piece of book text, which you've seen in the last few ICADs, that says, as gracefully as possible. And it seems so perfect. So I knew I wanted to do kind of like a stormy teal color and some gray, and then I wanted there to be a tree, and this is one of my favorites from Viva Las Vegas Stamps. And I didn't have to paint it. I did make some of the branches a little bit thicker, and then I'm changing the bottom portion and putting it on a little hill. But it's going perfect. It's going exactly how I had planned, which is great because that doesn't always happen for me. So using that golden fluid acrylic, I had built a little hill and some ground where the tree was. And then now I am thickening up some of the branches a little bit that are coming off of the side. It's a beautiful, beautiful stamp, and it does work really well all by itself, but I already had my paintbrush out, and I thought, what if I just beefed up some of those branches just a little bit, give it a little more contrast there. And then I'm going to heat everything dry. So it is fluid acrylic, and then I also added a tiny bit of water. So I always have a huge tub of water beside me. Also, the paintbrush that I used is a striping paintbrush. It's a very specific paintbrush, very tiny bristles, and that is so that I didn't overload any, like my project or anything with too much paint too quickly, and it kept things nice and thin. So I dried that all out, and then I have come back and I flooded my card with water. These paints that I'm using, I will link to them. They're by Plaid, and they're like home decor paints. They have a matte finish to them. It's matte acrylic, and which is different than other acrylics because a lot of acrylics have kind of like a sheen, a little bit of a gloss to them. And this one, and usually when you pick up something like an acrylic that's matte, it says satin on it, so keep that in mind when you're picking paints. But I got these at Walmart in the craft section, and it's like a whole line of home decor acrylics by Plaid, and they are really beautiful. It's quite a different, how do I put this, like quite a different color selection that I'm used to finding in acrylic paints, which was really nice because I don't always want to mix my acrylics, like to make my own colors. I am capable, just as you are capable of mixing your own colors, but I don't always want to have to do that. So I found these little pots of acrylic paint, and they're like $1.50, I think. Super affordable. And so I this is the first time I've been playing with them, and they are really lovely. I really like them. The colors are fun. So I have this sort of slate tealy color. And like I said, I will put some links below, and they'll have all the correct names because I am not looking at the bottles while I'm voiceovering right now. I'm sorry about that. And it's fun. It's a good color. So it's kind of stormy a little bit, and or that's how I feel as I'm putting it in the sky. By flooding my card with water, when I put the acrylic down, it helps me create gradients and fade my acrylic out. Plus, I can move my brush around in the middle of the card, and with the little bit of paint that's left over in my paintbrush, I get sort of like a hazy blue effect, which then mimics like a sky. So it's very cool. I did the first layer and I heated that dry. Now I'm coming back in with the second layer because I am kind of looking at it, and in my head I'm thinking that it didn't have quite enough blue. The only thing to remember that I regret a tiny little bit is that on the top where the birds are, I have sort of covered the birds up quite a bit with the acrylic paint, and because it's acrylic, it's not translucent like watercolor. So as I put the acrylic paint over that black stamp at the top, the stamp actually does start to disappear. So as I was doing it, I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe I can go back in and I can paint them in, or I can get a pen or a paint marker or a marker or something like that. But then as I got towards the end, it occurred to me that it just looked a little bit like they were flying away. So they're a little further off in the distance. So I ended up leaving it. But while I was playing around with the paint, I did bring in that kind of warm gray color that I have there. And I put it in the two bottom corners as sort of kind of like a little bit of a fog rolling in, but not a lot. It's just sort of at the edges of the painting. And now I have put some down on my mat, that gray, and I added some water. I did some splatters. And I got out my heat gun, and I'm heating the splatters just a tiny bit. And what's happening is around the edges of the splatters are drying. And because of the middle of the splatters, the paint is thicker, it takes a little bit longer to dry. So I wiped those out. So then I get these sort of hollow splatters, these little ringlet circles all around. And it's just a completely different feel. It's not as like heavy as splatters would be, but you still get that sort of same effect, and you have some variations happening in the background. It's one of my favorite techniques. I use it fairly frequently. Not necessarily in place of splatters, but just where I want a little bit of a lighter touch, because I love some splatters, do not get me wrong. I did try to do a little mark making with that gray, and I wasn't loving that, so I do a little bit of dots here, and then I just wipe it off. It just wasn't really lending well to those hollow splatters that I had going on, which is no big deal, because I have those and I can leave them just like they are. Oh yeah, I also did try to, I layered the gray over the teal, and then that was too stormy. Like the teal already has kind of a nice stormy feel to it itself. And I took some scraps of book text and I stitched them onto the card because I have that as gracefully as possible sentiment that I want to use. And usually I would leave my threads to kind of hang and be all scraggly. But because when I put that as gracefully as possible on top, it covered up the edge of the threads and they would kind of be poking out weird like, I just cut them right off. It's no big deal. I'm good to go. I like it. And I'm loving the contrast that it has, the stark white, the off-white of the book text, kind of that distressed paper color, the teal and the gray. Then I decide I'm going to do a tiny bit of white paint marker. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's my dog. All right. Sorry about that. Got the dog to be quiet. He was outside the door chasing his tail. What was I saying? Oh, so the white pen, I'm using the white pen to just add some more variation, kind of bring in a little bit of lightness, and when I use the white next to the gray, then it gets kind of like an ethereal feel to it a little bit. I like that. And then I stitched with the black thread really close to the edge of the card because that has some really great contrast. And I love like that raw black thick thread look. It looks really, really nice. It just kind of frames and borders the whole piece. A little bit more white marker. I do try to put a little bit of the white marker on the tree, and then I just wipe it off. The great thing about acrylics is if you get to them quick enough, they will just wipe off because most of them are water-based. And that's it. So thanks again for joining me. 11 out of 11 ICADs. These are getting up a little bit late, but we're getting there. Please feel free to subscribe. I'd love to have you along. And join my Facebook group. All of the links to products and my Facebook group and things like that can be found in the description box below. Just hit expand more. Thank you so much. We'll see you again.